Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jon Schnepp here. You are at Heroes, episode 22, where we're going to talk about the cinematic world of heroes and villains and a little bit of television, little comic books. We're going to sprinkle it all in there for you. My guest, as always, John Campea. What's up, John?
Woo! I'm excited. You know, it feels like it was just like a month ago that we were like, oh, pretty soon we're going to start Heroes, and it's episode 22. Like,
it's insane.
It is crazy.
You know, I was going over my notes yesterday just to make sure that I don't cover like one of the Flashback movies. I was like, did we talk about this movie? And I was like, God damn it, I got to go through 21 other shows? How did we do this? It does feel like 3 weeks ago.
It does.
And 3 weeks ago, we had Chris Gore on, ladies and gentlemen. Here's Chris Gore, back at you, one of the biggest nerds around.
You know what? Not many people can rock those glasses, but you rock those glasses.
Well, they were $5 at Hot Topic. So I'm not throwing a plug. I'm just telling you, in case you asked, this is where to get them for $5.
It's a good purchase.
Hot Topic.
Yeah.
You can find the glasses.
And I brought you guys also just because I can't believe you've invited me on the show again. I brought you guys some Taffy.
Some Batman Taffy.
Batman Taffy from the dollar store.
Wow.
Now, I'm going to have some, but okay, look. So it's got strawberry taffy. That's good. There's sour apple. That's good. Blueberry. But then they have this. They have mystery flavor.
Now I want the. I'm trying the mystery flavor.
Okay, well, you be my guy
Mystery
here. Let
flavor
me
is
tear
actually
off.
the best flavor of
There we
Dum
go.
Dums.
Mystery
You guys
flavor for
know Dum Dums,
mystery
right?
flavor.
No, what are Dum Dums?
Dum Dums are those suckers that are things you throw out when you would do Halloween candy.
Right.
Dum Dums are the worst. But mystery flavor is all the leftover goo. They just sort of mix together into the mystery flavor. So
Well,
enjoy your taffy.
I'm not going to eat the taffy right now, otherwise I won't be able to talk.
I got
Right.
cherry taffy. Oh, wait a minute. Shock and surprise. Artificially flavored. What? What? I thought this for $1. I thought this would be
Batman.
like all natural.
It's not real strawberries.
Yeah, what's Batman trying to do to us? All right. Well, let's move on to our very first topic of the week. We're going to talk about Superman. Superman speaks out. We've got Henry Cavill saying he won't appear in Suicide Squad. He thinks Wonder Woman is an incredibly strong character. She can go toe-to-toe with Superman sometimes. He says Lois Lane is the baseline to his humanity, literally keeping his feet on the ground, down to earth. Let's ask this topic.
First of all, I love this picture, man.
Yeah, Ray put together an amazing
Ray
picture.
put this picture. Superman holding Wonder Woman's back, totally behind Lois Lane's back. I totally love it.
So
it's like Superman's on Ashley Madison.
That's right. But revealed today, we're going to talk about. So this is Henry Cavill talking about his feelings about how Superman interacts with these two women in his life. Chris, what do you think about the movie, the cinematic version, as we move forward? Who's going to become a stronger part of Clark Kent and Superman's life?
Well, I think it depends on what happens between Wonder Woman and Bruce Wayne, because it's rumored in Batman v Superman that Bruce Wayne and Wonder Woman actually have some kind of relationship. So I do think it's interesting that all of this interesting Superman news came out of the Man from U.N.C.L.E. junkets. All of those quotes are from the press that Henry Cavill was doing for Man from U.N.C.L.E., but everybody cares about Superman and Man of Steel in the future of the DC cinematic universe. Right. So I don't know. It depends. I think actually audiences are going to decide this a lot. What's fascinating to me is this is a little off topic, but it connects. I'm reading the book, The Secret History of Star Wars, which I highly recommend. When I say reading the book, I'm not actually reading the book. I'm listening to the book via Audible, which is great because
I love Audible.
Audible's the best, and it's cool because they quote people like George Lucas is in it, Irvin Kershner, Lawrence Kasdan, and the guy who does the voice for the book, he reads it in the voice. He reads it in the voice of George Lucas talking.
Oh,
about,
really?
Oh my God, it's so good. But what's fascinating to me in listening to this book that's 24 hours long, by the way, and stuff that I thought I knew everything about Star Wars, this book is incredible. Because you find out stuff like what the original trilogy's names were supposed to be.
Oh, really? 9
films. The first trilogy was going to be Clone Wars. The middle trilogy was Star Wars. The third trilogy, Jedi Wars. Aside from that, what's fascinating about this book is you realize how much changed based on fan reaction. Fans loved Boba Fett. Boba Fett gets a bigger part, right? Fans liked or didn't like things about the prequels. Jar Jar has a diminished role. So what I think is going to happen to the DC universe, and I think also has happened with the Marvel universe, perhaps unbeknownst to us, things are going to evolve based on fans' reaction to Batman v Superman. You're going to see, if the Lois Lane Clark Kent Superman relationship isn't really going anywhere, isn't really feeding the story. You're going to see something happen with Wonder Woman and Justice League. So I really think that it's gonna depend on how fans react to Batman v Superman is going to affect the future of the DCU. And by the future of it, I mean if there will be if there's going to be that kind of commitment. I don't see Batman v Superman failing at the box office at all. I mean, it's just based on like the number of views on YouTube of the trailer, which I have contributed about 50 to 60 of those views personally. I think it's going to be amazing. I think we'll see. I think that like audiences are going to have to feel it out. I think this movie Batman v Superman does feel a little bit like they're throwing in everything but the kitchen sink, but this is the movie that's setting the path for the DCU. It's kind of a prequel in a sense to Justice League, right? By introducing all these characters. But I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say.
Well, I mean, okay, first of all, let's get this out of the way. We get a lot of questions around here about, hey, but what happens if Batman vs. Superman flops at the box office? No matter what happens, no matter how good or how bad this movie is, this movie is going to make tons of money. Now, how many tons of money is yet to be seen?
Right. 1 or 2 billion.
Yeah, this movie could be 2 hours. This movie literally could be 2 hours of Zack Snyder masturbating on a Castle Grayskull, and it's still going to make $1 billion worldwide. It just is.
Right.
Now, Amy Adams, I remember about 5 months ago, Amy Adams was being interviewed about it. And somebody brought up the question, hey, in some of the new 52 stuff, we've got the Superman Wonder Woman relationship going on. Are we going to see like a love triangle? And Amy Adams just shot. She goes, nope, there is no love triangle in this movie, in Batman v Superman, and all that kind of stuff. And you're right, it does look like in the trailer they are hinting at. It looks like it's going to be Bruce Wayne pulling off his suaveness to try to seduce the Amazonian, and we'll see how that goes. I don't know. You're right though. There is a lot that influences going on. It's funny, I was just listening to an Audible book. Actually, my wife was listening to it, and I was in the car with her. She's listening to Amy Poehler's new book, Yes, Please.
Yes, Please. I've also listened to that book. It's brilliant.
And she tells a great story about how Chris Pratt, who I love Parks and Rec. I love that show. But Amy Poehler in that book tells a story. Chris Pratt was only supposed to be in the first 5 episodes. The character was supposed to be in the first 5 episodes and then written off. But because the audience loved that character so much, he's Star-Lord now, and he's hunting down dinosaurs. So whatever. So I do think, but I don't think the audience as a whole. Remember, most people going to see this movie have not read New 52. They know Superman and Lois Lane. So I have a feeling it's going to take something pretty miraculous for them to break stride with that. It's possible, but I think it would take a lot.
What do you think, Chris?
But I have a practical question, and this is for you, John, being uber nerd.
Right.
This is a practical question. I don't mean to get too physical and nerdy with this, but Superman is a super being.
Right.
Yes.
He could, in the height of ecstasy,
orgasm.
Kill yes. Lois Lane with his laser eyes.
Right. Or crush her rib cage.
Or just like
de-spine her.
Well, how does Superman, from a practical standpoint, make love to a human woman who he could murder?
Remember in Smallville, they addressed that in Smallville. Remember in Smallville?
I don't remember in Smallville because I never watched it.
We can be intimate because I'm afraid of hurting you. They actually brought that up in Smallville.
However, Wonder Woman being a superpowered being, maybe superpowered being with superpowered being is a better matchup. I feel like this is for you to discuss, but I bring this up.
I can instantly answer it for you, Chris. These aren't real characters. This is all make-believe, folks. So we never really have to think about what's inside the thing and why is he not wearing underwear. But since you asked, I would probably say Wonder Woman would be a safer bet. In fact, Henry says that by saying, she can go toe-to-toe with Superman. Basically he's saying, they are an even fit and even match, but the reason that he is with Lois Lane is because she grounds him. And she brings him back to the place that he needs to be because he feels...
She's his humanity.
Yeah, he is... feels more human when he's with her, and she definitely he gets that empathy, empathic feelings from Lois. So I think who's to say whether Superman won't be in Wonder Woman? Like we've heard that Wonder Woman is going to
no pun intended.
Oh damn! Can't believe I said that.
First thing that I thought too.
Dang.
Oh my God.
My dirty-minded.
We're the worst.
Yeah, co-hosts over
terrible.
here. So
this is spiraling out of control.
Yeah, it's going crazy, guys. We have now officially gotten X-rated. So who's to say that he won't guest star in Wonder Woman? Like if even if Wonder Woman, the movie takes place in the 40s, and then we jump cut to now, hopefully it's not a 1 year later type thing. It's like, it'll be 40 years later or something where we've seen, a progression happen. Who's to know who's gonna be in Wonder Woman, or if that's also gonna have something to do with the Justice League? We don't know any of those answers.
I think Chris Pine is going to be in Wonder Woman.
Yeah, we know Chris Pine. He's going to play
literally in Wonder Woman. All right, moving on. Let's go to this weird rumor that went around the internet last week. George Miller could be directing Man of Steel 2. Now, some bozo announced this on some other show, and that bozo would be me. A rumor from inside sources, I've heard that George Miller has met with DC. We knew he was on the Suicide Squad set, hanging out, having some fun. So he's met with DC proper, Warner Brothers, to talk about directing some movie properties for DC characters. And that he wants to direct Man of Steel 2. He's a giant Superman fan. He was going to do Justice League Mortal, mainly because of his Superman fandom. If this happens, what do you think? But before we even talk about that, I just want to clear up that this is a rumor. I'm not part of the production company that's making Man of Steel. Just like this morning, a bunch of other sites said, Man of Steel is indefinitely postponed. They don't know that either. Once again, that's also just a rumor. What we do know is the process of how things work.
Yeah.
Man of Steel made a lot of money. A sequel was around the corner. They started working on a sequel. Zack Snyder was signed onto it. It was, unofficially called Man of Steel 2. When they unveiled they didn't even unveil the title. We were talking about this morning.
At Comic-Con.
At Comic-Con.
Yeah,
John,
just a logo.
You want to take this from
Yeah,
me?
I mean, Zack Snyder came out and said we're making first he referred to it as the Man of Steel sequel. They never said it had a title, but they bring out, I forget the actor's name who plays the general, and then and he came out to read off those lines, those immortal lines from Dark Knight Returns. I want you to remember the one man who beat you. Like, I just, So it was very clear from the beginning that they made this announcement that this was going to be a Batman versus Superman film, although they had not given it a title yet. We just all referred to it as the Man of Steel sequel until, of course, a few weeks later, they came out and said it's going to be called Batman v Superman.
Right. Now, was Ben Affleck already cast as Batman at that point in time?
Weeks before that happened.
Weeks before. It was a little bit before.
Was it?
Yeah.
When they
he talked about that.
So
he was cast, but was it announced? Like
No. The announcement didn't come for a long time later.
And remember, this only being a little over a year ago, everybody hated that Ben Affleck was Batman. There was just hatred everywhere, all over the internet. That's a horrible decision.
Now what do people think?
Now everyone's all over it. It gets tiresome hearing people complain about stuff and then flip-flop really quickly once the movie comes out. I'd like, for once, people to stick to their guns.
No.
I'm just kidding.
I'm kidding.
I like when people. I like when
it.
people flip. I'm just saying it happens all the time. It happens all the time on every single movie, every single casting choice, every single time people complain about it. And it's like, change is scary. I know, but change is good. So
because if you think about it, it's the one complaint about Fantastic Four that no one ever said, which is Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm.
Right.
There's a lot to say about that movie, and we won't derail and get into that. But what I'm saying is the thing that people never pointed out, Michael B. Jordan was good as Johnny Storm. I mean, I like Michael B. Jordan. I think he's going to be amazing in Creed. I think that's going to be incredible. So, no one complained about that. So you're right. Those casting things always cause controversy.
So
always.
Man of Steel 2, we knew that now was going to have Batman involved in it. We saw the logo. It's Batman and Superman. And then we found out later, like just a few months ago, Zach was talking about how this happened. They were doing a Man of Steel 2 story session with David Goyer, and they were like just throwing stuff around. This is years ago. And Zack Snyder was like, what if we cut to a scene where they're delivering this stockpile of kryptonite to Wayne Manor? And that's how Batman all of a sudden got introduced into Man of Steel 2's screenplay, and that opened the floodgates. He said, once I said that, I couldn't unsay it, and everybody started spitballing. And the story that was whatever Man of Steel 2 was going to be probably got pushed into what Man of Steel 2 is going to be. And Batman and Zack Snyder's love of The Dark Knight Returns, he's unabashedly a gigantic Frank Miller fan from that period of time, from that 4-issue series, which changed comic books just like Watchmen did. It's right up there on the same level of changing the way comic books were written and perceived by adults. And honestly, it's a turning point for all comic book fans from the 80s, as I think that maybe this movie could be a turning point for superhero films. It's hard to tell, but Snyder felt so strongly about it that the script had to get rewritten. And I know that's one of the major reasons it got pushed back a whole year. They had a script that they were working on and the spine of the story was there. And they were like, look, we're going to change everything by doing this. And then by doing that, then they decided to introduce the Justice League. So that made that 1 year of pushover have to happen, even though it's like 9 months or whatever. It was, you were saying it was going to Batman v Superman would have been out like a month ago.
Yeah, it was just a little over a month ago. It was supposed. It's hard to imagine. Think about that.
Really
that movie is already supposed to be in theaters today.
Yeah, that's hard to imagine. We'd all be I've already seen it 48 times. You know, be like, I can't sleep or whatever. So, you know, we still have 9 months and we have Star Wars happening even before that. So we're going to be a crazy next couple of months. But I mean, honestly, that's how these things happen. They just naturally progress. So yeah, of course, George Miller is meeting with them. I've heard from 2 different sources. Umberto from Heroic Hollywood. We talked about it 2.5 weeks ago. I even, as an aside, threw it into Collider Movie Talk like a week and a half ago as well. Just like, and we know that George Miller is directing Man of Steel, but let's not talk about that. I threw it as like a little like flavor nugget. Nobody said anything about it. Then I say it on another show, and everybody, just because I was a little more serious, like, seriously, guys, then everybody freaks out. And I'm not even involved in the production. So these kinds of rumors, it's a rumor. I happen to know that it's possible that it could happen, but I'm not in charge of the stuff. Tomorrow, it could be like Miller's directing Wonder Woman, or he's doing Mad Max
but
Wasteland.
The other thing that goes towards that is because not only, you know, from the sources that you heard from, the reason I think that it carries weight with a lot of people is because, number one, the very valid thing, he was on set of Suicide Squad. Why was he down there on set of Suicide Squad? Number 2, he is a Warner Brothers darling right now. Right. Warner Brothers have always loved George Miller, but then when he did Mad Max, and they loved what he did with Mad Max, that put him even more boisterous. And 3, as you mentioned, he was 2 weeks away from filming a Justice League movie of his own with, you know, as a matter of fact, with Man from U.N.C.L.E. being out, Armie Hammer was supposed to be Batman in that movie before any of us had ever heard of Armie Hammer. So when you're watching Man from U.N.C.L.E. and that bathroom fight happens, you're getting your first glimpse of Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, you're seeing it happen.
But you know, it's not one of these rumors that it's like, okay, yeah, listen to the rumor, develop your own thought about it. You can pretty much just file it away. It's a rumor that has circumstances that support it. You know, so that, once again, that doesn't make it fact.
Right.
It doesn't make it fact at all. Doesn't mean it's confirmed, but it is something that makes it worth discussing and pondering because there is so much behind it.
Yeah, and this report that came out today of Man of Steel 2 being indefinitely postponed, it's kind of ludicrous because it's like, who's to say that we've already heard that Ben Affleck is doing The Batman and it's going to be a trilogy, yet there's no dates announced as to when it's coming out. Just like we know that there's a Man of Steel 2 in development. We don't know what it's going to be called, but they're going to make a Superman sequel. It's obvious. I mean, he's going to be in Justice League. He's going to be in Justice League 2, but them not doing a Superman sequel would be silly, I think. So we're going to get Batman and Superman standalone films announced within the next year. I'm sure maybe even before Batman v Superman comes out, they're going to plant those flags. Oh, by the way, here's where our big guns are. Bam, bam, bam. You know, it's like that's that kind of thing that'll happen. It'll happen sooner than later. But
do your sources know anything about the film being screened? Batman v Superman, a rough cut?
No. I mean,
I've heard that a rough cut has been screened.
Well, no, actually, Kevin Tsujihara actually confirmed that and said, "Hey, he's seen it several times.
He saw it several. He goes, I saw it several times. Matter of fact, I just saw it again last night." It's like, shut up, Kevin.
Yeah, stop bragging about it and show it to us 3 while you're at it.
Show it to us 3. You know, we'd love to see it.
Yeah, we'd actually kind of like to see it.
Okay, good. So okay, good.
It's definitely set now. Kevin Tsujihara is showing it to us 3 at some time.
Well, we know that Kevin Tsujihara and all studio heads watch all of our shows, and especially Heroes.
Yeah,
so I mean, clearly.
Now that we've called you out personally, give us a call back. And let's move on to a thing I'm calling number 3. It's a wrap.
The thing I'm calling number 3.
Yeah, it's Suicide Squad, X-Men Apocalypse, and Civil War. These giant films all wrap principal photography this week. Recent pics from the sets have us talking about the Joker pranks that Jared is throwing. We were going into, courtesy of Brian Singer, we're going into Storm's house. Harley Quinn is, Margot Robbie is like giving people squad tattoos. We see Hawkeye. We got War Machine and Ant-Man with Captain America shooting those last little moments of green screen flavor in Germany. So, I mean, we've got all this fantastic stuff they're cramming into the last couple of days before they're like, it's a wrap. Let's talk about it. What do you think, Chris?
I'm losing my mind. This stuff looks so cool, and I love the Margot Robbie stuff. I mean, she's in the trailer for that. She's in this movie with Chris Pine called is it Z for Zachariah?
Yeah, with Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Looks amazing, that film. But her as Harley Quinn, I can't tell you how many times I've watched that Suicide Squad sizzle from San Diego Comic-Con. She's incredible. Those squad tattoos are so cool. And I think that there's probably as much, if not more, interest in Suicide Squad than Batman v Superman, which is hard to believe. But I love that they twisted it. Fans have complained how much DC is having to play catch up, but they're also not copying Marvel. This is what I like. They might be playing catch up with regard to number of films released, right? Because Marvel's way ahead on that count for sure, no doubt. But DC's taking a completely different tact, and I like this. It seems like a more serious, darker. I think the premise of Suicide Squad itself is awesome and original, and just seeing all this stuff wrap up all at once, which I think is completely coincidence, oddly, is amazing. Although the more you see about Captain America 3, it's basically Avengers 2.5.
Right.
I mean, it really is sort of carrying on, like it really picking up right where Age of Ultron left off, and then folding in the loose ends from Winter Soldier
And Iron Man 3.
And Iron Man 3, exactly. So taking all of that stuff and kind of folding it together. The one thing that does bother me about this stuff, especially in the Marvel universe, is so much of the destruction and bad stuff that happens is the responsibility of the heroes themselves. You know what I mean? If Tony Stark didn't do all that stuff, then the world would not have been put in jeopardy. I feel like that's a recurring thing that bothers me in these films, because there's no accountability for the dumb things that.
Well, I have a feeling they're going to be addressing that in Captain America: Civil War.
I hope they do.
I think that's one of the big, the big plot points is the fact that all that kind of stuff is happening. I think first of all, I'm disappointed in you, Schnepp, because there's just 2 big films just finished wrapping. There was actually 3 big films that finished wrapping in the same week. He just didn't want to mention the third one.
What's the third one?
Independence Day 2, son.
Well, no, I mentioned 3: Suicide Squad, X-Men Apocalypse, and Civil War. So a fourth one is what you're saying.
Wait, what were the
about.
3 that you said?
Suicide Squad, X-Men Apocalypse,
did that
and
wrap
Civil
this
War.
week?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm disappointed in John Campea for not knowing how to count.
Okay. Well, there's a 4th. You left out
I did.
Independence
You
Day.
are right.
Yes, you left that out.
But
and I
first
think
of all, that's
pretty
not
good too.
really a
It's not
superhero movie.
Bill Pullman is a superhero, if you ask me. No, and you know what's going to be really cool about about Civil War, because you mentioned that it's really kind of Avengers 2.5. And when you sit back and you look at it, like one of the Iron Man films had a bunch of the characters, and Captain America 2 had a bunch of the characters, but they're all freaking there. Other than Thor,
Right.
I mean, they're pretty much like all there in Captain America Civil War. But what I think is going to be the big difference, what makes this a Captain America Civil War film as opposed to Avengers Civil War, is that in Avengers and in Age of Ultron, every character seems to get a chunk of time in the movie where they're the focus of the movie. And then we move on to the next person, they're the focus of the movie. And then the next person, Hawkeye was the focus for a while, Cap was the focus for a while, Tony was the focus for a while. I think you're going to see in Captain America Civil War, and I feel more strongly about this now that I've seen the footage at D23, this is going to be a Captain America focused film. You're going to have a lot of these other people in it with a lot of different philosophies and a lot of stuff going on. But I think from start to finish, this is going to be a Captain America movie, because the story will always be, he'll be the center point of the story throughout the film. And I think that's what's going to make that movie have the same time. There's a word I made up on Movie Talk, though, called tangibilization. And that's what makes me excited when I hear about the wrapping of X-Men Apocalypse. It's like, even though I see these pictures of Jubilee and Storm in their 80s outfits, and you see these shots from Captain America or even the Deadpool trailer, knowing that they're done,
Right.
it takes it to that next level of, it's no longer theory, like it's real. They're done shooting Captain America Civil War. They're done shooting Apocalypse. They're done shooting Suicide Squad. These films are all real now, and that's what gets me even more excited. You know it's coming, but when you hear they're wrapped, it's that tangibilization. It becomes more physical, more real for me. That's why I get so excited about it.
And we know that with all these films, there are going to be like a series of reshoots or pickups or what they're called, you know, where they're like, hey, we realized we didn't get this shot. We need to bring you back and get the reverse angle, or we just added this scene that makes these other two scenes flow together better, or we cut out this scene and we need to put you guys on the plane to just connect these scenes. That's usually what's happening with these pickups.
They plan for these.
Yeah,
they've already got them scheduled.
Yeah, they got like 8, you know, in about 8 weeks, we're going to have you and you come back. The whole everybody's going to come back for a couple of days. So, you know, usually that happens, and it's only to make the film better. I never get worried about it. It gets worrisome when things like the FF, where you have like entire, like, hey, you know, I've heard there's trouble on set and like weeks of reshooting and all this, you know, when you hear stuff like that, that's usually when it's a bad sign.
It's mislabeled as reshoots, and reshoots implies something's wrong. It's technically additional shooting.
Yes.
It's not reshoots.
Or
it's
additional photography.
Yes. Right, exactly. That's all it is.
Well, Kevin Feige said something really cool as I chew on my Batman Taffy. Kevin Feige was talking about that once. He said, we just got to the point where when we scheduled the shoot, we already scheduled the shoot because we realized movies are living, breathing things. You may think you know how it's going to turn because you got the script, you got it all plotted out. But then when you sit down in a screening room and you see the edits, and you realize, you know what would really flow with this better if we did this? You know, so we just assume now, we plan that we're going to have new ideas, better ideas. We're going to see some things that we thought on paper would work that maybe they didn't. And we plan a few weeks for ourselves to go out and make the movie better. And I love that they do that.
Yeah, it's super exciting because then you appreciate the movie all that much more, that they gave it that extra effort instead of like, we just have to live with that scene that doesn't work. They're like, no, we're already ready to make sure if that scene doesn't work, we got a plan B.
Yep, to fix it.
All right, let's move on. We were mentioning Chiwetel Ejiofor. Let's talk about him as Baron Mordo. Bam, that's happening. They're shooting that right now. I'm super excited. I'm a giant Doctor Strange fan. He recently stated in EW, this is what he said: I am doing Doctor Strange, and I'm incredibly excited about it. That's all I can say. And about Benedict Cumberbatch, he said, he's a good friend of mine. And about Tilda Swinton, he said, I haven't worked with her, but I'm excited to work with her. She's brilliant. So he is incredibly excited to be a baddie. And I think he's going to do a great job. He was an incredibly frightening bad guy in the feature film Serenity, if you guys remember that. I mean, he was like the bad guy to be all bad guys, a super cold-blooded assassin. John, what do you think of this amazing actor?
Okay, well, look, for anybody who's watched Movie Talk for any period of time, whenever the rare film would come around that Chiwetel Ejiofor, people would know Campbea's about to go off on his Chiwetel Ejiofor speech. And I would go, if you've not seen Serenity, and him playing the operative in Serenity as probably the best villain we've had in sci-fi in years. He is so freaking menacing because he's so smooth and polite and well-mannered and like all that. And he thinks he's doing good, which was what makes him so terrifying. And I said, you watch, this guy's the most underrated actor in the world. You wait, blah, blah, blah. And then along came
12 Years a Slave.
12 Years a Slave. And he got, I kind of thought he should have won the Academy Award for that, but whatever. You know, Matthew McConaughey also turned in a remarkable performance, so kudos to him. And now people know it.
Right.
And so when I heard that he was going to come on Doctor Strange, first of all, when I heard the rumors, I thought, no way. They're not going to be able to get Chiwetel Ejiofor. He's riding a high right now. He's got his Academy Award nomination. He can do basically whatever he wants right now. And then he is doing Doctor Strange, and he's going to be the villain. And you get all excited when you think about that. This is just amazing. And at D23, we talked about this a little bit last week, but they haven't started shooting the film, so they had nothing to show us. But they showed us the actual production designs. So the actors in what their outfits are going to look like, and they had this incredible art of Chiwetel Ejiofor and Benedict Cumberbatch in his Doctor Strange outfit, which looked badass. It looked amazing.
Is it accurate to the comic?
Let's put it this way. It is going to look far better in real life than the comic outfit would. But you clearly, when you see it, you clearly see this is a Doctor Strange outfit.
Okay, that's awesome.
The way it's designed is so great, and Chiwetel Ejiofor looks awesome the way they got him dressed in some of this production art. So I'm super stoked for it.
First of all, funny that you are losing your mind about how great that casting is, because I'm trying to think back as you were saying that, like, what Marvel casting did people complain about ever? Has anyone ever, has the internet ever lost it over some Marvel casting? Most of the Marvel casting has been, well, maybe
some people kind of
that were unknowns at the time, or
some people raised their eyebrows a little bit at Chris Evans at first.
Right,
Because,
that's
he
true,
was
'cause
already
he was the
Human
Human
Torch
Torch.
and stuff like that.
Thought
But
he was like a little too goofy, and he's not going to be good. And then, bam, killed.
well, he's
it.
definitely not going to dye his hair blonde. That's the second Marvel character he's played where he won't dye his hair blonde. Chris Evans, come on, get out. But here's what I'm most excited about with regard to Doctor Strange is what I heard coming out of D23. And I saw the video, it's actually online, of Benedict Cumberbatch doing, speaking to the crowd there.
hello, everybody.
The way it was described, how it is, because I'm having read the Doctor Strange comics, the old school ones. I'm like, how are they going to make this a compelling movie? And the way it was described was like Inception, right? Like the imagery of it and the weird stuff that happens in the world is going to be akin to the effects that we saw in Christopher Nolan's Inception. That gets me really excited because it's rooted in some sort of unreality that I think will actually translate to the silver screen. Whereas, like, having read the comic, I'm like, how is that going to work, right? I mean, John, you've read the comic. I'm sure more comics than I have. What's having heard that? I mean,
I'm a big Doctor Strange fan. I've read all the Steve Ditko, Stan Lee comics. I moved into the Silver Dagger, Frank Bruner art. Cover Paul Smith. I'm a big fan of the artwork, especially like artists who can like take that crazy mystical style, add flavor from the Steve Ditko, and then put their own stuff and their own spin on it. So I'm looking forward to this Doctor Strange movie. It's one of the biggest Marvel movies that I'm looking forward to because it's a character that ever since I was a little kid, I've been waiting to see done right. Character's never been done except for like a pretty schlocky TV show. You can see that. It's just clips of that all over the place.
I'll be honest with you, I'll tell you right now. It's Marvel, so I give Marvel the benefit of the doubt. So if they say they're putting anything out, I have a certain level of enthusiasm for it. But I got to say, Doctor Strange is probably the least enthusiasm I've had for a Marvel film coming out, even though I was still looking forward to it. And then I saw that footage. That mock trailer they put together using production art with music and whatever, and I started to get a visualization. I started to see what their vision for this movie was, and I went from being, "Hey, it's Marvel, so I'll look forward to it," to "Don't care who's making this movie. This looks fascinating, and I can't wait to see it."
And it's going to have that horror element to
absolutely
it as well.
It is. Yeah, they talked about that at D23. I mean, you've got a horror director with it. Yeah, you've got Scott
Derrickson from Sinister.
From Sinister directing it, so they're bringing that to the table, and the visuals. Look, if you're looking for a great adventure film like what Marvel brings, from what I saw, you're going to be happy. If you're looking for some like really weird kind of like twisted kind of freako kind of thing, like some classic Doctor Strange, you are also going to be very happy with a lot of the imagery that I saw. It's shaping up to be something
And then they got
special.
Tilda Swinton, one of the greatest
Yes, as the
actresses
Ancient One.
of our time, especially with her ability to transform as different characters. She's such an amazing character actress. Chiwetel Ejiofor just watched, like I like to call them the suicide movies, where you have Requiem for a Dream. The movies after you see them, you feel horrible about humanity. He's in one of them with Audrey from Amelie, that actress.
Oh yeah.
Audrey Tautou, I think.
Tautou, yes.
I think it's called Dirty Needful Things or Pretty Needful Things, something like something things. And Chiwetel Ejiofor and her in it, and it's this extra depresso film. It's like, I don't even want to talk about it. It's on Netflix. Check it out. Have a great time watching it. But he's an incredible actor. So, I mean, we've got such a great cast set for him being Baron Mordo, Benedict Cumberbatch playing Doctor Strange. It's crazy. It's like you can't ask for better actors to be involved in what's basically a comic book movie, but this is going to be taken seriously as a cool horror movie that's in the Marvel universe. So I'm looking forward to this. Let's move on to our next subject, which is number 5 today. Preacher is actually shooting right now. And it's a TV series for AMC, the TV series, not the movie channel, the movie theaters. Check out our first looks at Cassidy and Arseface. Seth Rogen's adaptation for AMC has actor Joe Gilgun as the vampire Cassidy. He's on the on our right-hand side that you're looking at. And on the left-hand side is Ian Coletti as Arseface. Basically, it's a guy who tried to kill himself unsuccessfully, ends up joining our crew to save us from the coming apocalypse. Guys, what do you think about Preacher? This is one of my favorite comic book series. Number one, because it was so incredibly entertaining. Number two, the amazing story from beginning to end. And number three, that it actually ends. A lot of comic book series don't have the guts to end. They don't have an end sight. And it's what makes a great series is when you have a beginning and a middle and an end, and it ends. And boy, does this series end. So it's like Preacher is fantastic. It's one of the greatest comic book series. I don't know if you've ever checked it out. It's available in trade paperbacks. You should be reading that thing if you haven't read it. But up until right now, I never knew if it was going to be a movie or a TV series. Seth Rogen, awesome guy that he is, making it as an actual series, which is the way it should be done. It's 66 issues. They could at least make like 30, 24, I don't know how many episodes out of it. John, what do you think of these pictures?
Well, here's the thing. Like with me growing up, like I read an awful lot of comics, but I'm the vanilla guy. I read all the mainstream stuff, right? So like I read a lot of X-Men, a lot of Batman, a lot of Superman, a lot of, a lot of the big things. And so the last couple of years, especially, doing Heroes, I get really excited when we start talking about, I think when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, I'd never really read, I'd only touched Guardians of the Galaxy, but when we heard the movies coming out, I went, picked them up because everybody's talking about how so good they are, amazing. And like when we're doing this show, when we talk about Spotlight and like you bring up Nemesis, because I had never read Nemesis. So I went back and read Nemesis, like, and Preacher was one of those titles from your head. All my friends telling me, I don't like it. I don't like it. And it was one of those ones where all my friends told me, all my friends who recommended this book to me are far smarter than me, and so don't listen to me. Listen to my friends who are all way much smarter than me. But I got to be honest. Like I know it's not cool to say you didn't like Preacher.
But did you read a lot of them, or did you read a couple?
I read like the whole run.
Okay,
I read the whole thing, and it's like because I would read a whole bunch, and then I would tell my buddy in Canada, I'd say, I'm just not getting it. He goes, trust me, just keep going, just keep going. And for me, it was flat, whatever. But there are enough people that, like I said, are really good. Like the guy sitting to my right here. If he recommends a comic book, you got to read the comic book.
I would say, Campea, you should read it again.
Maybe I will pick it up and read it again.
Because it's like, could have been you were in a sour state. Maybe you're going through things in your life and you were like,
I didn't like Inglourious Bastards the first time I watched it. Then I watched it the second time. I'm like, what the F was wrong with me the first time I watched this? This movie's awesome. But so I have not been able to be interested in the television show.
Right.
I haven't been able to get there. And maybe the television show is going to be able to introduce a dimension or bring another layer of real life to it that will hook me. And then I'll go, oh yeah, that's really what the comic book was going, or whatever. Maybe it'll do that for me. Right now, I got to admit, I'm not all that interested.
Right on. How about you, Chris?
Never read it.
No?
No, never read it. But based on everything you said, now I want to. But it also reminds me, as you were talking, John, of like series that like I'm a big Dan Clowes fan, and 8 Ball I love, like
Dan Pussy, amazing,
which is amazing. I don't know, I love Neat Stuff, Peter Baggy,
right?
Like I'd love to see that stuff come out, so I'm excited about a non-superhero comic book property,
right?
Making it. The only thing is I'm not sure about Seth Rogen, man.
Well, he's not in it. He's just producing and writing.
Right.
And it's like, here's the thing is like, if you get into Preacher and you get into like what they're trying to do, they're like basically making this biblical Western. And Jesse Custer is this guy who gets the voice, the power of the voice. And he's in charge.
Not to be confused with the NBC reality music show.
Different voice. But he could basically say something to you and you have to do whatever he says. And he says it almost like in that, like, if you imagine it like a dark, like weird Dune style, like the voice, the special powers that they have in Dune. It's sort of like, that's how I imagine
my
it.
wife tell me to do the dishes. Do that voice again?
Yeah. Do the dishes,
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it right there. Yes.
So, I'm really excited about them actually attempting to take this on. I mean, Saint of All Killers, if you guys have not read anything from Preacher, I say read the graphic novel, the short series called Saint of All Killers. It's about Saint of All Killers and how he became the Saint of All Killers. Grim, horrifying, dark comedy. That's all I can say about Preacher. I'm really happy to see that they're actually making it. That's why you forget about stuff. Everything's always moving forward. And I was like, I saw those pictures, like, I didn't even remember they were making a Preacher series. This is fantastic.
Well, they've been talking about it for
forever.
So long.
Yeah.
And when it is finally happening, you're like, oh, they actually did. Let's just hope that Seth Rogen learned a thing or two after Green Hornet. and
Definitely,
it
this
doesn't
is-
have like Green Hornet.
Yeah, no,
feels
this
to it.
has-
I didn't hate Green Hornet.
I
thought
didn't
Green
hate
Hornet
it
was
either, but
fun.
it could have been. I thought it could have been really great. I ended up coming out thinking I thought it was going to be total bag of crap, and I came out much more pleasantly surprised than I thought. But I also thought, man, you could have done something really great with this, and I just felt like his sensibilities that he brought to it, not even as the actor, but as like the guy behind it, I just kind of felt like they missed some big opportunities. And you know what? Remember Steven, who's the guy from Kung Fu Hustle? Stephen Chow.
Stephen Chow.
Stephen Chow was supposed to be came up there, so there's some really, and he was supposed to direct it.
Yeah, he would
at
have
first
been,
too. Remember?
Honestly, it would have been.
That's
a
the Green
complete-
Hornet movie I wanted
That
to
would have
see.
been a fantastic film. Recently, Stephen Chow, some of his other films, God of Cookery, is now on Netflix. Check that out. King of Comedy,
Shaolin
not
Soccer.
the Martin Scorsese, but it's Stephen Chow's film called King of Comedy on Netflix. Shaolin Soccer, Kung Fu Hustle. The man is magic. So it's like if he did Green Hornet. It would
With
have
Seth
been
Rogen, it really would have been. And
I
if
mean,
he
we had
directed
Michel
it,
Gondry, who's an artistic director, and he has like his own style. It didn't click with Green Hornet. So this is totally different. Preacher is going to be a different beast entirely.
directed by Stephen Chow.
That would be crazy. All right, so let's move on to a thing I call minor mutations, where we're going to just talk about a whole bunch of craziness, and we'll list off what we thought was great this week. Stephen Amell, our own Arrow, was in the WWE SummerSlam, if you can believe that. He's jumping around with a bunch of other dudes. Nathan Fillion, he wants to play Booster Gold. He's let it be known that he's not going to be Green Lantern, but he's up for Booster Gold. We got Michael Chiklis, our very own Thing, as Nathaniel Barnes in Gotham, the new series Gotham. He's coming on there. And we have Lea Seydoux as Belladonna Bedreau. Hopefully I'm not Bedreau, thank you. She just got cast in Gambit. It's like down to her just signing it, but she's pretty much a done deal. And then we've got Marissa Tomei, our very own Aunt May, busting it loose in Civil War, doing some backflips as Aunt May, kicking some people's asses and making some apple pie for Peter Parker. We don't know what's happening. Chris Gore, what jumps out to you in this minor mutations?
Well, I don't know if Marissa Tomei is actually.
Yeah, she's Aunt May.
No, she's Aunt May. But what I'm saying is she's kicking butt.
Well, I
in
hope
it.
so. I don't know.
That would be. I mean, that would just be.
I want to see
I don't
her.
know. It's just weird to have like a hot Aunt May.
I love it.
Because yeah, but I think it definitely that signals if Aunt May is in Civil War, it definitely says that Spider-Man is a much bigger part of this story than we were originally led to believe, which I think is cool. Like Marvel's like throwing the gauntlet down. It's like, all right, we got your Spider-Man is in this, and it's going to be Marvel's Spider-Man. Really Marvel's Spider-Man, not Sony's Spider-Man. I'm not a fan of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. I'm sorry for those of you who
You don't have to be
like
sorry
those.
anymore. They're done.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But that just tells me that Spider-Man's got a bigger part. So that's really cool. And of course, knowing what the premise is behind Civil War, that makes it more fascinating. I don't know. I love all this news. This is great. And Booster Gold, really, Nathan Fillion?
Well, he's just chiming in. He's like, look, I want to play somebody.
Well, he should have been Green Lantern 7 years ago.
The internet just wants Nathan Fillion to play everything.
Yep.
The internet just, because the internet loves Nathan Fillion.
Booster Gold makes sense.
It
for
does.
Nathan
He
Fillion.
does.
I would never have thought of this, but then once he said, hey, I'd play Booster Gold, I thought about it. I was like, that's actually a really good idea. It's like a guy who's basically like putting symbols on. He's selling he's a celebrity superhero. So I think it would be a really fun, like comedic look at what it takes to be a celebrity superhero. What do you think, John?
The two things that stand out to me is it's really funny that you said what you said, because the Marissa Tomei in Civil War, to me, re-emphasized the fact that Spider-Man is not going to have a very big role in this film.
What?
I think, because really what they're going to do, well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, like we said, this is going to be a Captain America focused film. And when it's not on Captain America, it's going to be on what's going on between Captain America and Tony Stark. And when it's not on that, as we learned from the D23 footage, we're going to get a healthy dose of Paul Rudd in this thing as well.
And Black Panther.
And Black Panther and all this other stuff. But the biggest thing, of course, was that they were already shooting this movie for over a month before they even cast Tom Holland. And then Tom Holland comes in, then he's only there for like 2 weeks, and then he goes to Ireland to shoot The Lost City of Z. Now, some people say, so John, you're saying he's only gonna have a cameo. No. If you just have a cameo, you're on set for a day. I don't think he's got just a cameo. I think we're going to get a good dose of Spider-Man, but in the grand scheme of things, it's gonna be a smaller role. And I think Mr. Tomei's presence, to me, that really emphasizes to me one of the things Civil War is going to do is serve as an introduction to this new Spider-Man. Right. And that includes his Aunt May. We're going to get a new introduction to this Spider-Man world before he goes off and does his real big push with the Sony Spider-Man film. and then come back, I'm sure, for the Avengers Infinity War stuff. But the other thing to me, I got to say, look, I used to watch wrestling when I was a kid religiously. And still today, about twice a year, I'll watch WrestleMania with a bunch of my friends that are into wrestling and have some fun. Me and my wife actually went to WrestleMania this last year. It was a lot of fun. And SummerSlam. So we hear Stephen Amell, and obviously I know Stephen Amell. He's been on our show a couple of times. I don't watch his show anymore, but whatever. I think he's awesome. I watched that and I was just worried, oh, please, Stephen, just don't make a fool out of yourself because this is not your world. And Stephen Amell's a big, bulky guy. And then you see him walk into the ring and you realize he looks like a twerp next to these professionals. He looks so skinny and scrawny. And we've seen celebrities try to wrestle before.
Right.
And I got to tell you, full marks to Stephen Amell for what he did at SummerSlam. Did he look like he could be a professional wrestler next week? No. But one of the big things you got to do in wrestling is selling it, which means not doing the offensive moves, but getting beat up. And he did a really good job of selling it when he was getting beat up a lot. And he pulled off this move when it looked like he was going to do it. I thought, oh, they're going to find some way to make this not happen. Because he climbs to the top rope. The bad guys are down outside the ring on the floor. They're not in the ring. They're down on the floor. Stephen Amell climbs to the top rope. I'm thinking, well, he's not actually going to dive and do a Jimmy Snuka Superfly splash off the top rope out onto the floor. Something's going to stop him. He's actually jumping from the top rope down and crashed into 3 guys. And I'm just like, well done, sir. Yeah. Well done. I was really impressed by him. He was clearly having a lot of fun with it. Came out in the arrow hood, too.
The arrow hood.
So I got to tell you, big props to Stephen Amell for what he did at SummerSlam.
And there's really that weird, freakishly muscular goblin dude who's also like super acrobatic and does some kind of like triple flippy flip thing before he lands on a person.
I got to tell you about there's this guy they called the Red Arrow in it, which is why I think they kind of teamed him up with Stephen Amell. But they called, I think his name's Neville. I've never heard of this guy, okay? Never even heard of him. Yeah. But they call him the man that gravity forgot or whatever. And I'm like, okay. And he's a super bodybuilder looking dude, right?
Strange ripped guy.
But this is, I've only seen him wrestle in one match. This is the greatest professional wrestler to ever live. This guy was coming out doing like sailing and flying through the air and doing triple salts. And it's like, this guy could be an Olympic diver. The stuff he was doing off the top rope and all, it's like, I've never seen another human being do things like this. We're getting way off topic, but I don't watch wrestling anymore. But if you do, man, holy crap, this Neville kid is for real.
Well, I think Stephen Amell was very lucky he was teamed up with that dude.
Yes, he was.
Because hey, man, I'm going to do some of the traditional things. I'm not doing these like super aquatic, like triple flips or whatever. But that guy was able to handle. I like the weird villain, though, because that's actually like Ric Flair's son.
No,
the guy with the silver face?
No. That's a guy they call Stardust. His real name is Cody Rhodes. He is the son of the recently passed away. Dusty Rhodes.
Dusty Rhodes.
And his brother is Goldust, who's been a wrestler forever. And they both dress up in this weird thing now. And Cody Rhodes is a great wrestler. It was really freaky. It was really fun to watch. And once again, like Stephen Amell put his body in harm's way for the sake of entertaining a lot of people. And he did it. And he did it once again. He won't be confused for a professional wrestler.
Right.
But for a non-professional wrestler, hats off to you, sir. You did a great job.
And I got to say, I liked the Stardust. I liked the way he was like laying across the ring.
He's freaky. He's like the Joker.
Yeah, he's like the Joker meets Two-Face meets the Riddler, whatever.
To be fair, Jon Stewart also stepped into the ring.
I heard that. Didn't he like beat up Cena or something?
He brought in a steel chair and hit John Cena with a steel chair.
That's so awesome.
They have like a thing between on the Daily Show when it was when it was on. No longer.
Him and Cena had a thing?
No, not him and Cena. Him and the guy Cena was fighting is the one he had the running feud with, and then he came out and helped the guy that he's having feud with and hit Cena turned heel. In wrestling, when you become a bad guy, they call it turning heel. Jon Stewart turned heel.
It's amazing. Speaking of turning heel, we're going to Flashback, and we're going back to 1994. Has nothing to do with turning heel, but
94 is an evil year.
It's a pretty good segue, right, guys? We're going to talk about The Mask. Now, this movie was a really fun adaptation of the Dark Horse comic series. This movie was directed by Chuck Russell, and it stars the already rubber-faced Jim Carrey in one of his first 3 feature films of that year. Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber were the other 2, and also had the debut of Cameron Diaz. That was her first film ever. So it's safe to say this film put them both on the map because The Mask was a giant hit, and it's outlandishly cartoony yet creepily realistic special effects got it nominated for an Oscar. Let's talk about The Mask when you guys saw it. I mean, I was one of these guys who was already a comic book fan, but I wasn't reading The Mask. How about you guys?
I remember seeing an early screening of it and just being blown away, actually by Cameron Diaz, who at the time was like a teenager. It's weird because Cameron Diaz still is in. I mean, like her career has lasted so long because she was so young when she started. And I mean, this is the thing. I mean, like that was the year of Jim Carrey.
Yes, definitely.
Which is insane. But yeah, I don't know. I just remember thinking how original it was. I mean, it was just so original and bizarre and, you know, and it's weird because actually the character of The Mask is kind of Jim Carrey.
Yeah,
it's,
definitely.
You know, it's the id on steroids. I mean, it's insane. And I just remember just how original and cool it was to see something like that, especially with the special effects. I mean, the special effects, the makeup effects. I mean, just it's crazy for the time.
No, the digital effects at that time was stuff that people had never seen before. I mean, it was, at the time, it was absolutely jaw-dropping. Now, me and a bunch of buddies, the first time I moved out of my parents' house, me and a bunch of buddies moved in together. And we had like gym in the basement and like an MMA thing in the basement and like all that. But always, we had 3 VHS tapes, which are always, one of the 3 was always playing in the house. One was Noises Off, the John Ritter, Michael Caine, Christopher Reeve, Carol Burnett comedy, which is my number 1 and my number 2 favorite comedy of all time. The other was the Peter Gabriel Secret World live concert, because we were all musicians in the house too, and that was like one of the greatest musician concerts we had ever seen. And the third was The Mask. And part of the reason it was The Mask is, one, because it was hilarious, visual effects were incredible, and was the absolute liquid porno Cameron Diaz. Like her in that movie. I said this on Movie Talk about a year ago. I still stand by it. I don't know that any woman has ever looked as stunningly gorgeous in a movie. Okay, I'm just talking about the one character in one movie. As Cameron Diaz looked in that movie, she could seduce the Pope. I mean, from that movie, she was just that hot. Quick little thing: the only other camera stuff she'd ever done before that, do you remember this?
No.
She did a little bit of softcore porn.
What?
And you can find it on YouTube today. Now, very, very softcore, but it's go look that up. It's
I thought that
funny.
was the VHS that was running in your household, John.
But the Mask.
That is the weirdest collection. I have to say, John, that is the weirdest 3 VHSs to be rotating. Not Fight Club, which is like
I know
sort of
it's
typical
weird, right?
dude,
and us Star Wars guys, but it was always like those 3. It was me, Tran, Rodney, Jeff, Jed.
Brave
Nate,
of you to admit
a whole
that on
bunch
the
of them
show.
there. And we would
I
like
gotta give you
run
props.
those movies like it was always on. We would make pasta because that's all we could afford, and we would watch these movies. But The Mask, man, it was funny. It was a really cool take too on the mob and whatever. And like Jim Carrey, there's a few roles you can go that, wow, like Robert Downey Jr. was born to play Tony Stark. I mean, whatever. Jim Carrey, I don't know that there's anybody else that could have played The Mask like he played The Mask.
Well, who was the guy who tried to play it in the second movie? It was called Son of the Mask.
Wasn't it Alan
Jamie?
Cumming?
No, it was Jamie.
Are you sure? I thought it was Alan Cumming.
No.
I know. Here,
Jamie.
yes, Jamie Kennedy.
Thank you,
Was it Jamie Kennedy?
Yeah, he played the Mask and the Son of the Mask, and that was just a bad movie. So
Yeah, it was Jamie Kennedy.
Yeah.
And yes, not many people know, but that was a piece of shit movie.
yeah, it was embarrassingly bad.
It was embarrassingly
because
bad.
it's like especially after something like The Mask, when you saw, you're like, wow, that was a great film. And let's go back. We're going back about a little over 20. It's 21 years ago, 1994. So it's like, sorry, kids. 21 years. Some of you were watching this didn't even exist yet. We were watching this movie like
we were watching The Mask.
Yeah, we're finally another comic book movie. We're like, there's no, because you had to wait years to get a comic book movie. It's like literally, I think the things that came out when The Mask came out was like The Phantom and The Shadow.
Yeah.
Like all these weird, like there are all these studio executives. Maybe we should adapt these 1930s serials. You're like, what about the comic books we're reading?
I love The Shadow.
Look, I mean, there's parts of The Shadow that are good. Most of it I hate.
Shadow knows.
I mean, Alec Baldwin is just kick ass in whatever he does, but like The Shadow just had too many donkey ideas. It was just there was elements of it that were good. What do you think about The Mask?
I love it. I mean, it just and like I say, I was lucky enough to go to a preview screening of it and one of the first to see it and just blown away. But you're right, that period of time is really weird because that was like where comic book movies were few and far between, and technology wasn't where it was, and these companies didn't even have control over their characters and properties.
You had just covered the Fantastic Four in your magazine Film Threat roughly a year before that.
Right. Yeah, we did a cover story on the Fantastic Four, actually.
The Roger Corman
version. Yeah. Yes, and I just recently saw the documentary called Doomed.
How is it?
And it's awesome. It's
nice.
It reminds me of your film, actually, John, The Death of Superman Lives. What happened? It's what happened to this Roger Corman, unseen Fantastic Four movie, which you can get as bootleg pretty much a lot of places.
I think it's on YouTube.
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube, pop up here and there. But it's interesting. There are things about it I didn't know when I was watching. I mean, Roger Corman's in it. The entire cast was there. I'm actually in it because I was on the set for the whole shooting of it because I was just a fan.
Sure.
So, but I don't want to derail talking about Fantastic Four because I have a lot of thoughts about it.
That's a documentary I'm interested in seeing.
Yeah, well, just see that documentary, but I have a lot of thoughts based on Fantastic Four recent events, but I think
we'll cover that at the end. So,
yeah.
All right, let's go over to a thing I call Spotlight. Now, this is basically where I'm just going to give you guys a comic book that's come out in the last, 50 years that has not been adapted into an animated series or a television series or a movie. And my big question is why? This week, why have we not seen the Micronauts? The Micronauts, ladies and gentlemen. Now, come on. If you don't know what the Micronauts are, as a kid, I only knew what the Micronauts were because it was like, it's like Star Wars, only tiny. So they were like,
Space Glider,
yeah, it's based
Baron
on
Karza.
the popular toys. This comic book was written by Bill Mantlo of ROM fame with stunning artwork by Michael Golden. This comic book series rivaled the cosmic fantasy of Star Wars for its time, and for me as a kid reading these comics, it was just the bomb. This series has been begging to get made, either as an animated series or a feature film or a TV series. Let's get small and sweat it out about the Micronauts. What do you think?
First of all, I used to collect the Micronauts when I was a kid.
A Croyer,
time traveler, space glider,
that's right.
Baron Karza,
Biotron.
Yeah, and then there was what was that one ship? The hydrocopter.
That's right.
Oh, believe me, I took baths as a kid and played with the hydrocopter.
Yeah.
Just the hydrocopter, just to be clear. I was a kid. So I love the Micronauts, the toys, and like the comic book. Here's the thing is because there were a lot of tie-ins at the time. There were a lot of tie-ins of comic books with toys. I mean, ROM was one, right?
Yeah.
It was a comic book that was related to a toy. The thing is this, in this case, the comic book was really good. The comic book really created this whole universe, which didn't negate other universes. That was sort of the weird thing, like, being like these purists, well, does this take place in this universe? I hate those, this fan theory about blank is brilliant. No, it's not. It's always dumb. Anytime you ever see a headline, some clickbait headline about this fan theory that all these different movies take place the same, stupid. But in this case, because the Micronauts are small, they can take place.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't impact. I loved it just because the character design was just so weird. It was just so weird and carried over into the toys, which were sort of slightly smaller scale than traditional smaller toys, and that they were all articulated.
They were also interchangeable things that can be taken off and put different arms
like
and legs.
Legos. You could take them apart and like intermix the different parts between the characters. Yeah. And Baron Karza was cool because he really was, let's be honest, he was a ripoff of Darth Vader.
Yeah.
I mean, he had like that sort of, the big sort of gas mask thing and on him, but he was like, the toy of him was metal that could come apart with magnets. It clung. I mean, it was some of the most innovative toys ever made. And the comic book, that's begging to be made. I mean, look, if we can have all these Transformers movies and have a Transformers universe, there are other lines, there are other properties that I think are best suited. We don't need a Hungry Hippos movie.
Right.
We need a Micronauts movie.
Yeah, we don't need a Monopoly movie or a Tetris movie or a Chickpeas movie.
Was it Ridley Scott developing Monopoly for a time?
Yes, it's like ridiculous. What? Like, get on the tip of making the Micronauts already. What's going on?
Well, now remember, guys, like 2 years ago, Rhett Reese and Paul Renwick, who wrote G.I. Joe Retaliation and Zombieland, they were writing a Micronauts movie for J.J. Abrams. It was over at Paramount. They were developing that movie. They wrote the script. JJ was going to make it and stuff like that, and then it just disappeared. They never kind of. And I remember Wernick, I think is how you pronounce it. He was talking about it. He goes, yeah, we finished the draft. We turned in the final draft. It was pretty much what you thought a Micronauts movie would be, which didn't sound like the writer himself was screaming confidence about it.
That doesn't sound too exciting.
That doesn't sound all that great. But at some point, now I believe Bad Robot, if I'm not mistaken, Bad Robot still have the rights to it. JJ, now that doesn't mean JJ himself will go off and direct something, but it would mean if they did do something, he would produce it. So look, studios, Paramount as early as 2 years ago was looking at the Micronauts. They started a pre-production. They wanted to take a look at it. They got it developed. They had a shingle to produce it, and they just never went anywhere. Could it go somewhere? We'll see. Bad Robot's a little busy these days, but it is possible. They've taken
a good friend of mine, Dave Johnson. He's really well known for doing all the covers of 100 Bullets, the comic book. Incredible artist. He's a super nerd, super geek, and we were just talking about different properties. And one of the properties that he was developing many years ago, about 7 or 8 years ago, was the Micronauts. And he did a whole series of character turnarounds, and him and a pal came up with a whole animated storyline series for it. It went nowhere. Ultimately, I think Nickelodeon right now has like possibly the rights from J.J. Abrams' company. There's some, I don't know who owns it right now, but they are in development.
For the feature film rights.
For an animated series.
Oh, for an animated series.
But it's like, that's how rough it is. Like people always forget, they don't understand development hell. The process of just, hey, you can have a great idea. That's great. Everybody has great ideas, I think. And then, when you talk with your friends, everybody like throws ideas around. What about that? That would be cool. That's really fun, and it's very fun to do, but then the execution process of getting it from that to an actual animated series is hell. And it's just so much work. People don't understand how hard it is to get anything made. So anybody who's ever made anything, bravo to you. It's like hats off. If you've made anything, it's a challenge to make anything. I would love to see someone try to make the Micronauts, because I'm telling you, man, that you're right. So whoever said it was like Transformers material, that really is just like that next thing just waiting to pop off.
And really you could do it in stop motion using the actual toys.
Chris Gore, why are you talking like a robot? This is the way a Croyer talks. Wait, is it? I don't know. All right, guys, we're going to hit it with some Twitter questions. Let's start it right off with J.R. Thiel writes, with Doctor Strange shooting in November and Civil War coming out in May, do you think we could get Doctor Strange post-credits? It's not a bad idea. What do you think?
Well, wait a minute. Are you asking, are we going to get Doctor Strange in one of those post-credits?
Is he going to pop up in a post-credit scene in Civil War?
Okay, so remember, they've finished their principal photography on Civil War,
right?
But we're still a long ways off from Civil War. One of the things they could do once they finally start shooting Doctor Strange is to have an afternoon and say, "Okay, guys, we just got to shoot this post-credit scene for Civil War." I think they made a mistake. I think Marvel, which doesn't make a lot of mistakes, I think they made a mistake by not taking advantage of Age of Ultron and having an Ant-Man bumper on that.
They blew it.
It
was so disappointing. I remember being in the theater opening night. I plunked down money to see Age of Ultron. I had seen it before in a screening, but I wanted to see it opening night because there's no more fun than seeing opening night with a paying audience.
Right.
Because stuffed shirt critics, that's not a fun crowd, to be quite frank. And there was audible like, people were bummed. People were disappointed. Like, okay, yes, all right, we know Thanos is coming. He's been coming for several movies. We know this. We know this. That not having Ant-Man, huge missed opportunity.
Ant-Man needed the help.
Yeah.
Yes.
From a marketing point of view,
they blew
that movie needed the help. It's a movie called Ant-Man. To the general, now to those in the comic circles, that means something. To those in the average movie-going audience, that sounds silly to them. It's a hero most of them had never even heard of. And granted, they hadn't given a lot of marketing push to Ant-Man because they wanted to focus their marketing efforts on Ultron. Totally understandable, but I said, but you wait, man, you wait. In Ultron, in one of those post-credit scenes, they're going to put an Ant-Man and start the real push for it, and they didn't do it, and it was a blown opportunity.
It's hugely disappointing because Guardians of the Galaxy last summer was such a huge surprise hit.
Yeah.
Where people, Guardians of the Galaxy, a comic that's not known by the majority of the public, right?
Right.
Only to comic book nerds know Guardians of the Galaxy. And they announced Guardians of the Galaxy 2 before Guardians of the Galaxy was released. We're not talking about Ant-Man 2. We're talking about Ant-Man as part of the MCU, and you're going to probably see him pop up in, Infinity Wars 1 and 2, I'm sure. That's a Marvel. Avengers movies are like just Marvel characters, all hands on deck. Pretty much, I think we can know this from now going forward. But, it really did need the help, and it's disappointing.
Well, let's hope that Marvel has. I'm going to hope that Marvel has learned the lesson of that mistake, because it was a mistake. I think a simple post-credit scene with Ant-Man would have given another 10%, 15% to Ant-Man's opening weekend. I really do. I hope they've learned from that mistake. Doctor Strange is another one of these characters that, to a lot of non-comic book reading audience, which is the 95% of the rest of the people, it needs the bump. It's coming very shortly after Civil War. Put in that post-credits there. So I will guess, I'll go out on a limb and say, yes, I do believe we are going to get a Doctor Strange bump at the end of Civil War.
But I have a question for you guys. All right. Is it becoming an incredible burden on filmmakers now to hit the checklist of everything you need to do for one of these movies?
I don't think so.
You need you need like a post-credit sequence.
Right.
You need to do fan service to the original comic. You have to have Stan Lee do a cameo, which is I always love and the best part. You have to there's like all this burden. You have to serve the larger universe, and whatever other story is happening in that larger universe has to have some sort of acknowledgement. There's so much you have to do that after a while it ceases to be a movie.
I disagree.
And just is like another part of it's like
Chris, you don't have to do any of that. All you have to do I'm saying you don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is make sure you have an engaging, amazing story. Get really good actors, get a really good director.
But you do have to do it because all these directors are burdened with doing that.
Remember, a lot of the times the director has nothing to do with the post-credit scene. So the director doesn't even have to have anything to do with that.
Well, that's true. I mean, James Gunn had nothing to do with that Guardians post-credit scene on Thor Dark World, which was awful, didn't match anything from Guardians, and he doesn't even know who directed it.
They don't need to do it. While Joss Whedon did do the
congrats to the
shawarma.
intern that did that. I think he did a really good job. That intern.
I heard James Gunn did direct that.
No,
I heard he didn't. I heard he had.
Not for Thor: The Dark World post-credit sequence.
I didn't mind that sequence.
It was weird.
It was Doctor Who-ish.
It didn't help Guardians. It didn't help.
No,
we thought of Guardians, right?
People who knew the comic thought of Guardians, but the average film goer had no idea what they were talking about.
Well, think about it like this: Ant-Man, if it had a Spider-Man post-credit scene, that would have boosted the sales for Ant-Man as well, because people would have been like, "There's the first Spider-Man's at the end." Spider-Man's a bigger character.
I don't know.
Than Ant-Man.
I think people who would have paid money to go see a movie just because Spider-Man is in a post-credit scene, those are people who were going to go see Ant-Man anyway, I think. If they were that hardcore into their comic book movies that I would buy a ticket just to see Spider-Man in the post-credit scene, those people were buying a ticket to go see.
Itself. I guess it's a little different than when you're like, I'm going to see this movie just to see the Star Wars trailer.
Well, here's sort of bigger question. When will we see Marvel team-ups? I want to see a Marvel team-up, Ant-Man and Spider-Man in a movie. I think would be good.
Well, you're already seeing it. Civil War.
Civil War. You're going to see
Captain America versus Iron Man.
Right,
but Iron Man is teaming up with all these other people.
But do you remember Marvel team-ups?
Oh,
Marvel
of course.
team-ups was always one of my favorites. I always
Spider-Man and Red Sonja. That's one of my favorites. That's one of my favorites.
Marvel team-up. It was the Thing 2-in-1, where it'd be like Thing teamed up with someone. And then the other one was the other great comic that I always
The Thing and Man God.
It's always the weirdest combinations. But like when I go to comic conventions and I'm always like, oh, the dollar box, and I'm sort of rifling through and getting deals on stuff. I love what ifs.
Oh,
what ifs are
fantastic.
the best.
They're awesome. They're awesome.
What ifs would be a great anthology series if they did that. We were talking about anthology series earlier with the Twilight Zone. Yeah, like a Marvel what if, and then you could just have fun, one story at a time, just doing crazy.
Like if every 2 years, Marvel Studios said every 2 years we're doing our what if anthology. So this one is what if Spider-Man was actually Aunt May or something like
make it like a 30-minute show on Netflix. So every week it's what if Tony Stark was Captain America? What? what?
Yeah.
I mean, you could do the craziest stuff, and you get these actors to come in, and they're just like 30-minute little episodes, because all those what ifs, when you actually read the comics, they are kind of weird. They're like just sort of like whackety schmackety do, but I love it, like when they mix, they always, I don't know how many issues there are where they mix up the powers of the Fantastic Four.
I have all of them.
Oh, I love it.
My favorite
dude.
is when actually Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and like the original
I have
Marvel
that one.
bullpen.
I have that
and it's
one.
drawn by Jack Kirby.
Yes,
It's
it's so
fantastic.
good.
Now, I should point out that we've come a long way from the question about Doctor Strange post-credit
Strange.
scene. We should probably get to question number 2.
Sorry about that.
We've nerded out. All right, let's move on in our long-winded way of getting on to question number 2 in part 8 hour of here we go. We got Steve Foley asking, can you explain the timeline with Batman vs Superman and Suicide Squad, as apparently Suicide Squad happens before Batman vs Superman but's released after. Now, I think the question they're asking is mainly because you're looking at this trailer. I don't know what the timeline is myself, but you see the Joker is in Suicide Squad, and you see Batman on the roof of the Joker mobile or Joker's car. Harley Quinn's making some cracks. Obviously, they all go to jail. There's also allusions to the Joker creating Harley Quinn. So there's going to be, I think,
Isn't it sort of like the anti-Seven Samurai, where Batman collects all of them? So instead of them all coming together, it's
Right.
Batman sending them all to prison.
well, technically,
Isn't that how,
I have heard
that's
that?
what
No,
I heard.
Yeah, I've heard that. What I have heard was that all of them who are in prison were all put there by Batman. That's what I have heard. But once again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, that's not confirmed.
Right.
I have heard stories that a good chunk of this movie happens prior to the events of Batman v Superman. I've also heard that that's not true. So which one is that? I don't know. It all depends on which rumor of the week you're listening to. If you really want the true answer is nobody knows. Nobody actually really knows. For all we know, Batman on the top of the Joker's car happens 5 weeks after the events of Batman v Superman. It would feel weird for them to put out Batman v Superman and 3 months later put out another movie that's supposed to happen before Batman v
That would be
Superman.
weird.
That would be weird. That doesn't mean they can't have flashbacks.
Exactly.
But the honest answer is there is, as of right now, no official answer.
But it does feel like there's flashbacks in it, because you see,
It does.
you
feels
see
like it.
Harley
Yep.
Quinn, not Harley Quinn. You
Yeah.
see her as a psychiatrist, a doctor, and you see other characters sort of in pre-form. So I think the timeline in Suicide Squad will bounce around, and I don't even know how relevant it is, how it fits into Batman v Superman. I think that
Good
they're
point.
just they may cross. Does it really matter? No. Make a good Suicide Squad movie, which based on what we've seen already, audiences are pumped for it.
Suicide Squad, we were talking about it earlier. That movie reminds me of what Marvel did with Guardians of the Galaxy. What Marvel
Yes.
did,
Yeah.
and the reason Marvel did that, why they took a very strange, like, kind of pocket of weirdos. You got Rocket Raccoon, Groot, Star-Lord, all these weirdos, was because it was like a way to open up the Marvel cosmic universe, take a big chance. It's a very expensive big chance, but also not risk their entire Earth-based endeavors. They got Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and Hulk, and then you have Avengers. Those guys aren't going anywhere. They're opening up this brand new other universe with it's a chance. You got a talking raccoon. People were like, what is this movie? But it showed us that audiences are really yearning for something really fun and something new and exciting. So Suicide Squad, that hit every single checklist, like you were saying, and you're looking for those checklists. That has that checklist of DC like saying, we need our Suicide Squad, but we need to do it first, because they're reverse engineering their universe. They're going big explosion into all their characters. So that's exactly the same way they're introducing a whole bunch of different villains into the whole world of all the DC.
Well, what's
universe.
funny is what's happening with the DC cinematic universe is exactly what I said. And I said this back when I was on Attack of the Show on G4. This is years ago, because Marvel had made all these movies, these individual movies, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, leading up to Avengers.
Right.
I said, if DC wants to start their universe, they should just start in the middle of it, and they can do prequels. Then they can go back in time and do a Wonder Woman origin story. They can go back in time. And what's interesting, they kind of mess with the timeline a little bit with having Superman come in later and Batman already having had an illustrious career
Right.
and multiple Robins.
Right.
Right. So I want to thank the people at Warner Brothers for possibly having heard what I said. Who knows? But I like that idea. I like that idea that they bounce around. That look, there's no. I mean, like, you're familiar with the characters. You don't need to tell, the Batman origin story. Although it looks like we're going to get some sort of flashback in BVS, which is fine to set him up. But I like their approach. I like where they're going with it, and everything I've seen from the trailers, I think, is made all of us very optimistic.
Yeah, I just wish it didn't take this long. I mean, like, I want to see the Batman with Ben Affleck. Can that come out next year?
Let's see if we still feel that way after we see Batman versus Superman.
I'm hoping we still.
I believe we will.
We'll even be more.
I believe we will.
Have you guys talked about the whole Jason Todd Joker thing? Is that
we talked about it last week.
So
I don't believe
should I
it
shut
at
up?
all.
Okay, all right, I'm going to shut up.
All right, next question.
Because there's a lot of good evidence, but I'll shut up.
The evidence is shaky at best. All right, let's move on to another question. I think it's Tim with a bunch of Servage. Is that what that? Okay, that's what it is.
Servage
Galevar. Sorry if I ruined your name. He said, "Do you guys think we could get a Marvel Knights Netflix show at some time?" So now we've already got the Defenders, we've got Daredevil, we've got Jessica Jones, we've got Luke Cage, we've got Iron Fist, and then the Defenders. So that's going to happen over the next 3 or 4 years. He's asking, because they've introduced Punisher into Daredevil, we only have to introduce Blade and Moon Knight and maybe one other person to have a Marvel Knights type of a movie.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on like who owns all the rights to those characters, right?
Well, Marvel has all those
because
characters.
it's weird with Fantastic Four, and there's been a lot of talk about Fox should give it back to Marvel. There's so many other characters like Silver Surfer, among others, that are part of that Fantastic Four universe. But what I want to do is I want to take what, John, you said earlier, that thing, because that could actually respond to almost every question, is the truth is, no one knows. What did you say exactly? I just want to record that and then just like play that for almost every, could this happen? Could this happen? Anything could happen. But the point is,
no one actually knows.
Right. I feel like that's I mean, we'd love to see it. Would we love to see it? Everyone sitting here, yes, we want to see every character.
The excitement of doing these shows in general is that we all get to talk and throw different spins on news that we've already heard about. So it's like, it's all conjecture until the movie actually comes out. That's really what it is.
But you got to keep this in mind too. And this is one of the reasons me and Christian Harloff on Jedi Council will talk about this. This rumor came out about a Star Wars Netflix show, and it could happen. That could happen. The reason I doubt it was the same reason why I doubt like a Moon Knight show. When you look at a show like Daredevil, right, which they've done so well, they've knocked that show out of the park. But when you look at that show, I can tell you right now, they make that show for lunch money. That is such an inexpensive show to shoot. Really look at the sets they use, how small scale everything is, and why? Because you don't need all that other stuff to tell a great story. You just need to tell a great story, and that's what they do. There are certain characters you cannot make a running show for lunch money with. Like, we saw Supergirl. That show is not going to cost lunch money. That show, they put some money into that show. And I think Netflix is looking at these shows, and you look at all the Jessica Jones and the other characters they've got lined up right now. These are also characters you can make these Netflix shows for lunch money. You cannot do a Star Wars show for lunch money. There's some things about the Marvel Knights that there are elements that you cannot do for lunch money. So that's what makes me go a little hesitant about the possibility of that happening, just because you can't do it for cheap, and Netflix right now is really loving being able to make successful stuff for cheap.
Now, having said that, they spent $100 million on the first season of House of Cards. Netflix has Netflix money.
Right.
Yeah. It's possible that, and you're right, lunch money, Daredevil, but look at the results. With very little money, they made something that I think, all of us, including the internet, which we know to be very critical, thought Daredevil was amazing. So
we've got a Daredevil season 2 already. We didn't know if they were going to do a season 2.
Yeah, but remember this too. This is the ultimately, what the real measuring step or stick for Netflix is a little bit different than a traditional television show. What they look at is how many new subscribers did we get once we launched this show? And with House of Cards, and remember, it's hard to imagine in those terms because who doesn't have Netflix? But when House of Cards came out, their subscriptions skyrocketed. One of the reasons they were disappointed with the, not Curb Your Enthusiasm, but the sitcom with Jason Bateman, Arrested Development. The reason Netflix was so disappointed with it is because they hardly got any new subscribers when they relaunched Arrested Development. Daredevil is kind of same thing. Everybody loved Daredevil, and that makes Netflix very happy. But unlike House of Cards, which saw a spike in new subscribers because House of Cards was coming out, they didn't see this big spike in new subscribers. Just all the existing subscribers really love the show. So good, they want to keep their subscribers happy. We'll keep doing this show, but it doesn't warrant the type of money that like a House of Cards warranted them at the same time because it just didn't get the same results.
I think ultimately once we have season 2 of Daredevil, we have Jessica Jones, we have Luke Cage, all those things are playing on Netflix, and then they make another announcement. Say they like, now we're doing the Marvel Knights, we're upgrading, we're spending more money, we're doing Moon Knight, we're doing this, and it'll all culminate in this Marvel Knights movie with Punisher and all these other characters, and it's only on Netflix.
But what
You'll
lineup?
see subscription rates rise ultimately when you get to a bigger budget point. Because
Maybe.
Daredevil's pretty much still an unknown character.
But I had
that's
asked,
true too.
John, what lineup of Defenders are they going to have? Because the original lineup was Doctor Strange,
Right,
Hulk.
Silver Surfer.
Yeah, like it's a weird lineup.
It's an odd, strange lineup. The only lineup that actually makes sense in the Defenders is Luke Cage. And he's only you know. So I mean, what is this Defenders? Is obviously not the comic book Defenders. It's not going to be what we expect in any way, shape, or form. I'm cool with whatever they do. It's kind of, I like what they're doing with Daredevil. I'm interested to see what they're going to do with Jessica Jones. Would I like to see a Moon Knight like Robert Meyer Burnett sweating last week? I want to see a Moon Knight. Moon Knight would be really fun. He's like a weird Egyptian Batman. Just like, it'd be cool, you know? So we'll see what happens. I would prefer to see the Marvel Horror Nights where you have like Werewolf at Night and Blade and Dracula, all those characters, the freak, Marvel's Frankenstein, all those bizarro takes on their horror franchise done. I would love to see that. That's me though. I'm a very small percentage of people who want to see that. All right, let's move on to the next question. Keith Heavey says, after such praise for the Civil War footage, what arc do you expect the Black Panther to have in the film? So John, you saw this Civil War footage at D23.
Yeah.
Now they're asking, like, what do you think from what you were able to pull apart from the footage and what you've heard? How do you think they're going to move that into Black Panthers?
Nothing at all. I mean, we got glimpses of Black Panther and we never really got to see him in context. And that's the big thing is, you know, what are we going to see in context? So the footage that they showed us there didn't tip many hats to show us, you know, what can we expect here? What can we expect here? So honestly, I don't know. I still believe, like when they made the announcement in Hollywood at the El Capitan Theater and they had Chris Evans on stage and they had Robert Downey Jr. on stage and they brought out Boseman and introduced him as Black Panther and they had Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. tug-of-warring on each of his arms. I still believe, like we all thought then, okay, so Black Panther is kind of playing. Remember, there was no Sony deal at the time. Right. We all got the hint. Okay. So Black Panther is kind of in a surrogate way, in his own way, going to be playing the Spider-Man role in some ways. He's going to be the key prize that they're going to be fighting over. I still think that's the case. That's my belief, but I'm not basing that on anything other than what I saw. So really, what's his arc going to be? No idea. I still suspect, like we did from the beginning, that he will be that surrogate Spider-Man role in the thing where he's going to be the main guy that both sides are fighting over. That's what I believe at any rate.
How about you?
I don't know. I saw pictures, actually, the costume leaked out.
Yes,
which looked
when he's on
cool.
that rooftop.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. But I don't know. Again, everything's just going to be speculation. I think I agree with what you said, John. I think Black Panther's pretty much going to be the Spider-Man, but that was before all the Spider-Man stuff was negotiated, right? Like now that Spider-Man's in it. And also I'm one of the, like, I like to look at the stuff, but I don't like to know stuff. You know, like I think like I like the way that Star Wars has gone about it, because from the trailers and everything we've seen, we don't really know what the story is, right? Which is great. And I think like some of these trailers give away way too much.
Way too much.
I think one of the worst, The Martian. That if you can avoid seeing the trailer for The Martian,
I feel that way too.
I was so mad watching that 3-minute and 9-second trailer. It was like you gave away the 2/3 of the movie, and I can guess the end. It was I call bullshit on that. Wait, can we say stuff like that?
You just
you're good.
Yeah, but I really just I don't want to know stuff. I want to show up to Civil War and can't wait. And I think BVS, actually, Batman v Superman, showed me just enough where it's like, okay, you've answered all my questions. Ben Affleck looks like a great Batman, and Superman is really mad. Like this is we're gonna see these characters in ways we've never seen them, on the big screen. I cannot wait.
Well, I feel sometimes I'm indifferent to like spoilers. Like sometimes they don't bother me at all. But like with The Martian, I'm like, I actually wanted to see that movie, and I feel like I saw it.
Yeah, I've already seen it.
Smart enough to kind of put all these pieces of footage together and reverse the order. They're just showing you everything. It feels that way. So I'll be pleasantly surprised if they didn't show you everything. I'm still going to see the movie. But for myself, I think Black Panther and Andy Serkis, they've already intimated that he's going to become the character Claw when he lost his arm in Avengers Age of Ultron. He played Ulysses Claw. I mean, I can't remember if his last name is Claw. It's Ulysses something. But, Vibranium is going to be something that is part of the Marvel. It already is part of the Marvel universe.
Yes.
That's what Captain America's shield is made of. I don't know if the opening sequence of Civil War is going to take place in Wakanda or what's going to happen, but something is going to happen to bring Black Panther into the fold of that story.
What I'm really curious about going forward is how much of that, you were at that event at the El Capitan, they've announced that schedule, and that schedule's actually already changed.
Yes, it has. It has changed
How
slightly.
much more will it change based on audience reactions to these movies? And by audience reaction, I mean box office. How much more is it going to be altered? We haven't heard a word about the Inhumans at all, right? And that's coming in 3 years?
Well, they did announce the Inhumans at that event.
No, they announced it. What I'm saying is, and we've heard nothing. So what I'm saying is those announcements are great, and DC has of course announced an even more ambitious slate.
Cyborg,
yeah,
Green
it's just
Lantern.
insane.
Yeah.
So how much of this stuff? What I'm saying is, take some of this with a grain of salt. I think Marvel's got the track record and reputation. I think we'll see things change, not dramatically, but
you might see things change more so with DC than Marvel. I think Marvel's staking those claims. The Inhumans is their X-Men. And there's no way that they're not going to handle that the proper way. Because they're like, look, Fox owns the X-Men. They're not going to get the X-Men back. They could possibly get Galactus and Silver Surfer if they play ball. But Fox, they have a really bad relationship. Like Marvel and Disney are like, yo, you can't have those toys. That's how you get that money, son. Fox, that's why there's no Fox Fantastic Four or X-Men toys. Because they're playing hardball. They're like, no, you just have the movie rights. You can't have any of this other flavor. We own that. So that's like, it got really ugly with Fox and Marvel.
Yeah.
So that's where it's at. So, so what if the Fantastic Four failed? They're going to try to make another Fantastic Four before they give it back to Marvel.
Well, to be specific, it's really Fox and Disney,
yes.
right? It's Fox and Disney.
Yes.
And Fox actually owns the original Star Wars movie. So when you buy the complete collection, digital collection on Disney Anywhere, right? You have to buy Star Wars separately. It comes separately when you purchase it, right? So there could be some negotiating power there with, I'm sure Disney wants to get the original Star Wars film away from Fox. There could be some wiggle room on this.
Right.
And really it's these companies just wagging their dicks around. It's a dick measuring contest.
Right.
That's pretty much what it is.
They did just announce, and this gives you some hope with this whole question, because like with the going to the Star Wars thing, they did just announce that whole new Blu-ray set you're gonna be able to get from Episode 4 right through like all 6 movies, whatever. So that tells you, okay, so some deal had to have been struck. So they've got a deal. I don't think they gave up the rights, but they shared some kind of profit sharing, whatever. There's a deal there. Look, historically, the relationship between Disney and Fox has been very rocky. There might be some signs of that ice thawing a little bit, but I do not think you're ever going to see them. But it's possible. It's absolutely possible. I'm just saying for me, I don't think you're ever going to see them strike the same kind of deal with Marvel that Sony just struck with Marvel to let their characters appear in Marvel cinematic films. I don't think they want to help Marvel become any bigger.
No, and I don't think Marvel Disney wants to help Fox at all.
Absolutely.
So I think whatever deal will happen, it'll be like, look, you can have your little X-Men TV show. Give us back Galactus and the Silver Surfer and Doctor Doom. You can keep the Fantastic Four. I think they're going to try to get the peripheral characters that are great villains for everyone else in the Marvel universe.
And by the way,
on.
it is Ulysses Claw, Klaue, Ulysses Claw.
Ulysses Claw, right on. All right, next question is Manila Rice asks, since Marvel is doing, that's their name.
Rice, baby.
Yeah. Well, since Marvel is doing genre films, do you think Thor is missing out by being more sci-fi and less fantasy, magic-y, which isn't a word, but a magic style is maybe what they're trying to say. Like, is
No.
it like
No. They did Thor absolutely right. For them to do Doctor Strange, if Marvel had come out of the gate with Doctor Strange and they had not warmed up the audience and prepped, tilled that soil, fertilized that soil of the movie-going audience, you would not. It would have flopped. Doctor Strange would come out and it would flop. Why can you do Doctor Strange now? Because they did handle their universe so well. And if you're going to do a Thor out of the gate, you can't just go all Asgard mythology all the time, 24/7, going off to... You had to base it more in the mundane, which is I always call it the fantastic within the mundane. You had to base more of it in the mundane, talk about it more in science terms, bring a little bit of magic into that. Doctor Strange is possible now because Thor handled it the way it did. Right. And I think you're going to see now, especially if Doctor Strange is a big success, we already know they're doing Ragnarok. I think you're going to see Thor now push more into that direction because they handled it right to start with. So no, I don't think they made a mistake starting off.
I agree 100%. Marvel started it off with Iron Man, which was basically all technology.
All technology,
and there was
human
no
science.
magic. In fact, Jon Favreau wanted to stay away from the magical elements of the Mandarin's 10 rings. Yep. You know what I'm saying?
So they called it a terrorist organization.
Right. So it made perfect sense, and that was a giant hit. Hulk did the same exact thing. They scienced it. They were like, they used science to explain this Hulk monster. Captain America, science, using that serum. It wasn't magic. It was like, we explain this through genetics and this and that. Once they got to Thor, how they described the magic was, well, in your world, what you call magic is what we call science. That's a line in the movie that Thor says to Jane. He's explaining it to her. And when you finally see Asgard, it is kind of curvied out. It is all super magical, but they describe the Rainbow Bridge as part of the technology. They describe all these things like how we transport back and forth using Hemdell.
And how much time did they spend on, think about this too, in that first Thor film, how much time did they spend on Asgard?
Oh, not that much time at all.
So not only did they baby step us into the realm of mythology and magic, they also baby stepped us into what? Science fiction.
Right.
So once we had that, then we had Avengers with which was mostly on Earth, but also had an invading alien army. Now we've had Asgard. Now we've had invasion alien army. Now we can do Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right. We introduced Thanos at the end of Avengers.
Exactly. So they've done this before, where they take baby steps to build up the audience to accept wild sci-fi, and they're building us up to accept wild mysticism and magic and stuff like that. They're handling it perfectly.
And they had it reverberate through the character of Iron Man in Iron Man 3, where he's like freaking out about there's creatures out there who can invade our world. He's having nightmares about it. Henceforth,
he's having PTSD.
He creates Ultron because of that. He creates that world shield. That's what Ultron is supposed to be, to protect us from these aliens that no one on the planet Earth is ready for. So it's a really cool way they did it. Chris, what do you think about this?
I actually love Thor: The Dark World. I think it's there's something about it that the design in it I thought was really unique. I thought it had a sense of fun that I think the first Thor movie didn't necessarily have. And I don't know. I love the idea of like science being magic. I mean, look, if you took an iPhone, 100 years ago, you would be you'd probably be burned at the stake, but also,
or
it would be
God.
thought of as magic. I mean, it'd be thought of as magic. Anything that's like, oh, this is good. What is it? It's magic.
Oh, wait a second. I'm sorry. If you took an iPhone back, it wouldn't work.
Yeah,
there's no cell tower. Exactly. Like, I'm not getting a signal. Stabbed to death by anyone.
Right. So I've never had a problem with it. I think it's a great explanation of why it exists. So. And it helps me enjoy the Thor movies, because Thor was not necessarily my favorite character, and I thought I quite enjoyed the second film.
They scienced that magic. Let's get to the sweaty question of the week. It's by Cami Trio. They ask, I was wondering if we'll ever get to see Dex-Starr in the DCCU. DC is more fantastical now, so it may work. So if you don't know who Dex-Starr is, let's cut away to that picture of what Dex-Starr is. Did we get a picture? Dex-Starr is a Red Lantern from the Green Lantern universe of Red Lanterns, Yellow Lanterns, Orange Lanterns.
Isn't he the serial killer who only hunts bad guys?
I wish. He's a cat.
First thing I thought
he is a cat, an angry cat named Dex-Starr, and he's a Red Lantern. So I thought I'd end the sweaty question with a kind of a crazy.
That's a sweaty one.
Crazy question.
That's about as sweaty
I have to say, possibly on the very fringe element, just like you saw Cosmo as like a little side character in Guardians of the Galaxy. Like it's that dog with little, supposed to talk and stuff. You might see him more in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. No one who hasn't read any of these comics knows anything about it. Just like Dex-Starr is like a throwaway character that will probably maybe be in the Green Lantern Corps #3. I don't think he'd even show up in the Green Lantern Corps movie that they're talking about doing. What do you think about these side characters?
There are two possibilities of a Dex-Starr showing up. The one possibility, it's absolutely possible that we never see him. Why? Because he's not even known or beloved amongst comic book fans. It would be considered completely freaking ridiculous, especially when you understand the tone that Warner Brothers is trying to take their DC cinematic universe in right now. So on the one hand, there's a possibility we'll never see it happen. On the other hand, there's a possibility that we'll never see it happen because it's stupid. So, yeah.
I don't know. I always love like part of the thing that got me into like Crisis on Infinite Earths, which I still have those original, at least the original 12 series, the miniseries.
Marv Wolfman and George Perez.
Those George Perez. I mean, it's like comic book porn. Those where you're like, you can sit there with a magnifying glass trying to see all the characters.
Chris is talking about is like these giant double spread pages of like literally like 85 different characters all hanging around the Justice League table. And George Perez, there's certain artists who love doing this. They love like, I'm drawing every single character. And this is from the 1970s version. See the belt buckle? And they get so weirdly detailed.
Yeah. So we need George Perez to come in and direct it. But see, I like stuff like that. Look, there's no reason to say that it may never happen, but I do like when they put in little Easter eggs. But the Easter eggs are really like, I think that like maybe too obscure.
As you say, all Easter eggs are only good if there are some people they're going to get.
Sorry, guys, I gotta say ixnay on both of you. Rocket Raccoon ixnays both of you guys.
Yeah,
but
true.
Rocket Raccoon. Okay, say what you will about Guardians of the Galaxy and all that kind of stuff. Remember, I'd known a little bit about Guardians of the Galaxy. I wasn't really a reader. I knew very well who Rocket Raccoon was before Guardians of the Galaxy, right? All I'm saying is
DC could take Dex-Starr and make him like a Rocket Raccoon.
You don't have the starting awareness of the character, nor did you ever use him as predominantly as Marvel did use Rocket Raccoon. I mean,
no, but we're talking about comic books. No one in the regular normal universe of Earth knew what Rocket Raccoon or Groot was before the movie.
No, that's absolutely true. But what I'm saying with a guy like Dex-Starr is that there's almost nobody in the comic world that reads comics that knows who he is either.
No, that's very true.
Guardians had a little bit of a foot up on that.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying is the possibility of them throwing that character in because
never say never.
It's a proven, people love the Rocket Raccoon character. Chuck a weird animal. I could see it happening. I don't know. I don't want to see it
If it was
happen.
Marvel, maybe.
Right.
In this new DC cinematic universe?
They got to wait 5 years. I'd say
maybe,
they got to rocket forward a little bit. So this has been episode 22 of Collider Heroes. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let me thank my guest, Chris Gore. Where can we find you online?
You can find me at that Chris Gore on Twitter or just chrisgore.com.
And by the way, that shirt rocks. I love that. That's one of the first new Stormtrooper shirts I've seen. Yeah.
D23.
It's very awesome.
Cool
Thank you for the crazy taffy. My mystery flavor awaits me. John Campea, where can people find you?
Well, I'm probably in the bathroom pretty soon because I finished my mystery taffy. So that's probably going to go through me like a bullet through butter. Anyway, you can find me on the various social media networks on Facebook and on Twitter, simply at John Campea. Of course, watch me every day, Monday through Friday, with all the team here on Collider Movie Talk anytime. And of course, on Thursday, I will be joined by Mark and Christian for Collider Jedi Council. So make sure you check that out.
And also on Facebook, you can just like click and subscribe to Collider on Facebook.
Yep, follow us on Facebook.
I think tomorrow you're going to be announcing a brand new thing that's only available on Facebook.
That's right. We have a new giveaway starting tomorrow. Depending on when you're watching this, it'll be on Thursday. Or Wednesday, I'm sorry. We got a giveaway we're doing, some pretty cool things. We're going to announce what those things are tomorrow. And part of entering is just by becoming a follower of our Facebook page. So look up Collider on our Facebook.
Pretty slick the way we just made you subscribe to a Facebook thing, right? Weird like that. You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Just at Jon Schnepp. I also have a Facebook page. You can go. It's like just click on Jon Schnepp. You can follow me there. And please check out my film, The Death of Superman Lives. What Happened? It's a documentary. You can go check it out. You can get a digital download or a Blu-ray at www.tdoslwh.com. Support independent film. Thanks again. This has been episode 22 of Collider Heroes, and I will see you next week.